Welcome back to the dopest show you won't get sick of. I am Spencer, and this is Sasha. I spent most of my 20s in federal prison, but have been off heroin since April 9th, 2010. Got a lot of stories about the stupid stuff I did to get me put in prison, the crazy stuff that happened while I was in prison. God forbid you end up in prison. You won't have to make some of the same mistakes I made. So, this is an absolutely absurd and insane story, and it all took place pretty much in just one day of my life. I have so many stories. I have some stories I have to break up into multiple ones. I'm going to tell what could be told in probably 3 or 4 different stories in one story because it just happened in one day. Okay? I had this kind of like life motto of if my life was a movie, would I watch it? So I tried to make every day some type of little adventure, and I was smart enough to keep out of being arrested for a good long while. But of course, I didn't have the intelligence to realize that it's an inevitable thing when you're dealing with drugs that you're going to end up in prison. I lost my 20s to federal prison, so I'm definitely not glorifying this. And this is actually the day that led me to try a needle for the first time. So, because people wonder, how does that happen? What would possess you to do that? And actually, it's going to make a whole lot of sense when I tell you why. So, I climbed the ladder in many different rackets. I have been a mid-level to higher-level dealer of a number of drugs. Coke was the main one, got involved in H. When I was 16, I was the driver for the biggest dealer in my city. Ultimately, he went to jail on a 90-day driving charge in which he got robbed when he was in jail. That's another story. Had all this stuff in a safe. Somebody stole the safe, ripped it out of the floor. But anyway, he never picked up back after that. Hadn't seen him for a good bit. And if I had a connection, I was making money. I'd supply my habit. I could supply me living, run around on the streets, everything else. If I didn't, I was a no luck down in the dumps addict, just as bad, if not worse, than anybody else. So even though there were times where I had money and I was dealing, there were times that I was scheming, scamming, stealing just like any other addict. And I'll tell you that. I admit that straight up. Now, at this particular time, I wasn't last day at my mom's. I was out running the streets and stuff. But at this time, I was between couches. Okay, I was a couch surfer, and I was between couches, and I had an important dental procedure I was supposed to do. So, Mom let me stay at her place for a couple days. And basically, the place I'd stay in before, we got evicted. They all went somewhere else, so I didn't have anywhere to go. So I was hoping maybe these few days there could end up staying there for a little bit, but I did not want to do good, and she was right every bit to, for me not to be living there. So I was looking for this dental procedure because I thought I was going to get pain meds. So they do this dental procedure where they pretty much put you to sleep by doping you out of your mind on benzodiazepines. Benzodiazepines are the devil. Every time I've taken them, something bad has happened. One time, I lost 24 hours of my time, woke up in a house. As I explored the house, I saw a 400-pound white guy with a scratch marks down the middle of his face. His call girlfriend, this skinny little blonde thing next to him with the black eye. And there's a Mexican fella in the back with a broken nose and 2 black eyes. I don't know how I got there. Checking myself, making sure I didn't get busted up. That's another story in itself. That's one time. Then the first day I went to prison, I took Xanax, took the rest of the Xanax, which I'd taken as prescribed to keep me from having a heart attack by the impending prison. And you have to register your name, set up your phone when you first get to prison, and you will have to say that name the exact same tone for the entirety of the rest of your prison sentence. Well, for some reason, I told people my name was Seth, not Spencer. So I said, Seth Mumpower, and I had to register that name into the phone. And so for 5 years straight, I had to say, Seth Mumpower. For 5 years, every time I wanted to use the phone instead of my actual name. Got laughed at a good bit over that, deservingly so. But anyway, this procedure, they kept giving me this benzodiazepine powder that went under my tongue. I kept pinching my legs, so I'd wake back up, so they'd keep giving me more. Well, to my, to my sadness, they did not give me pain medicine after this procedure. When I went back home, I wanted to go out driving and doing what I'm doing. My mom would not let me, as she should not have, because, I was doped up on benzodiazepines. Any other drug, I know, better sit at home. I'm not doing too good. But for some reason, every time I'm benzos, I think, I'm fine. And I'm not fine. So She wouldn't let me leave. Ended up calling some of the family members over there, and she's like, matter of fact, you're going to go to this place, and it was this Christian rehab, and I'd been to the kids version of it, but now she's wanting me to go to the adults version of it. I was 18, and I was like, I'm not going to that place. That place is a whack job, okay? Basically, they try to pray the addiction away. They try to pray, I'll talk about that tomorrow. It's a place, it's nationally been exposed. It's a place they send people that get addicted to drugs, and I mean, it's drug addiction. Now that I know what I know about it, it is absolutely absurd and wrong what they do, and they are past federal inspection because they are not considered a mental health facility. They're considered a faith-based program, so they don't have to get inspected by state and federal groups because they don't have to. They're not considered a mental. They have all these loopholes, and every donation they get, they don't have to pay taxes, and everybody that donates to them gets a tax write-off. And oh Lord, I didn't want to go to that place. So family comes over. My one uncle felt bad for me, so he let me go stay with him that night. It's like, well, tomorrow you have to go, but let's come stay over here until you get stuff figured out. And just for that night, well, he bought me a 6-pack of beer. I'd probably drank 20 beers in my life. I'd done mountains of every type of illicit powder, but I hadn't drank much beer. I guess he figured since I was an addict, well, it'd keep me calm for the night, so I drank the beer. And seeing as how I wasn't used to drinking, I stayed up half the night peeing. But before I did that, sitting there with him and his wife, and like I was glad that he let me go over there, so I wasn't going to take anything or steal anything from him. But went to the bathroom, and like a responsible drug addict, I checked the medicine cabinet, Percocets. I took 3 of them. Well, about 30 minutes later, nothing was happening. I remembered he had a son that was in prison, so I went back in the bathroom. I checked the Percocets. It's aspirin. His son beat me to it. I smiled, but I was let down. He ended up, I had my little bag of a handful of things that I had. I'd gotten the GPS out of my car and everything else, which was a TomTom. Back then we didn't have GPS on the phones like we do today, so that was the thing. He ended up getting me a carton of cigarettes, gave me $20. Well, I called up a guy who's a coke dealer, met him over on the projects. I actually have video, see where it happened. It shows roughly where it's happening. It was this idiot dealer who I ended up ripping off for everything he had. I've told a little bit about that before, which ultimately led to the worst beating I've got in my life. Got kicked for a minute by 3 200-pound guys, and I wasn't nothing but about 140. I'll tell that in another day. But anyway, he was an idiot dealer, and the reason I ripped him off was because of this. I robbed him. I didn't rip him off, but took everything he had. Now, when he ran out of drugs, he'd sell people fake stuff. He sold me some fake coke. So I was like, oh my God, I had $20. He did that. So I got a carton of cigarettes. I've got the TomTom. I'm walking down the road after I found out I'd been ripped off. And there's a truck drives up. It's the Kingpin's brother. He's like, what are you doing over here? I said, that idiot fool just sold me some fake stuff. Said, can you take me down to the pawn shop? Went down there, pawned the GPS thing, which back then they were a pretty hot commodity. And I had all these extra pack cigarettes too. So, got a decent little bit of blow. Drove back to his place. The Kingpin, who I used to drive for, was there. He was happy to see me. Thought of me like a little brother. Now, we ended up doing the coke that we got. And the guy who had driven me there, his brother was trying to just like drop me off wherever, and I was like ignoring him. Now that the Kingpin's there, I'm like, I can get messed up for the day. So he had me driving him again, and ultimately we drove over to the same projects we came from, the exact same place we just came from, to his mom and his stepdad's house. It's a wild story with them. He broke his stepdad's jaw at one point, but anyway. Just drug use rampant out in the open, and his girlfriend, I've talked about her before, the one who got a 2 to 3 eye by smoking so much that she passed out and woke up with it off to one side. Okay, she's sitting at the table, and he's got his stuff out on the table, his bags of H, and she does this and goes to the bathroom like, dude, she just took your stuff. So he's banging on the door trying to open it. he opens the door. She's sitting there. She's got her pants down, acting like she's in the bathroom. She's trying to do it. He knows she stole it. He's got back up to where he's selling a little bit, but it used to be he'd get me to go pick up $6,000 to $20,000 worth every 2 weeks when I was 16. He was only dealing with anywhere between 400 to 1,500, 2,000 tops. So it was a big, the mighty have fallen type thing, and he was the original guy who brought the town. So he ends up inviting 2 coke dealers to the house. He decides he wants them to come over there. One of them's the one that ripped me off. So I start talking crap, and I'm talking all kind. I'm mad at him. I'm mad as can be at him. And he starts saying something about. I'm like, well, he keeps talking about how he's a boss. He's a boss. Went by Diddy, I guess, because P Diddy was cool. I think he was touched. He seemed like a slow adult. And he's like, well, I'm a boss, and I'm like, yeah, a boss that sells fake stuff? How much of a boss could you be? It sounds like you're scraping up pennies. You stole 20 bucks, And, but he's got his friend with him, and he does have a piece on him, which is very visible. So, definitely not trying to start any fights over that. And this was back before I knew judo, jiu-jitsu, boxing, karate, any of that. And I'm about 140 pounds soaking wet. My biggest weapon back then was my brain. I knew how to manipulate stuff and do stuff. And I did get off on people in fights, but how it would work usually was I'd find them, spot them before they could spot me, and I'd take off on them and not give them a chance. But I didn't know a whole lot. I'm not going to act like I was some master fighter. I wasn't back then, but I was pretty smart tactically. So he starts, pulling his pants up, his pants that are falling down to his knees, exposing his butt, like acting like he's getting mad, but he's smiling, doing this weird thing. Well, what ends up happening was there's this girl who comes in. And I guess there's some type of 3-way thing going on with the former kingpins, him, the mother, his kids, and this girl who's over there. The girl who's over there, we'll call her Mimi. It's enough difference so I can say it. Mimi comes over there and she's like, well, whatever I have, he has. So she gets some type of disability check for something, and she's got her check and she's wanting to blow it on blow. So we end up going down to the car, and one of these 2 guys gets in the back of the car, but it's kind of weird. It was kind of like the way they were coming, and then I made sure that I was with him because I knew he'd have my back if we got in a fight, and I think they were planning on maybe trying to get me there, but I got them after that. I got them for everything but it was bad. That's another story. That's the worst whooping I've taken. Oh, it was bad. I lost vision in the one eye for 36 hours. But they had to start from nickels and dimes and scrape from pennies because I stole everything they had right off of Rio. But anyway, we get one of them in the back of our car. The other one of them is in the back of the other car. I don't know what caused this exactly. The former kingpin, he's driving. He insists on driving. He's following them. They're going to the bank. Well, something happens. They get in some type of fight over the phone or something. They're trying to get away from us. The one girl is driving, Mimi, and the mother, his children are in one car, and they're driving and they got a coke dealer in the back of their car who's got a piece on him. We got one in the back of our car who's got a piece on him. And we're driving 90 miles an hour in a 35, it's called Peters Creek Road in Roanoke, okay? There are cops everywhere. That's where I got hit by the vice, was on Peters Creek Road at Apple Market. We're driving 90, even breaking 100 at some points. And this is cars and both, like we're running red lights, chasing them. They're trying to get away from us. I don't understand what exactly happened. Sometimes twacked out people, like I don't understand why they were running from us. I don't understand why he was angry and he intimidated them to where, I don't know. It didn't make any sense. Like it was an illogical thing, but so much stuff like that is. Ultimately, end up getting what they're getting. We end up, a lot of stuff happened in between. We end up at the townhouse, which is back over in the county, my side, at his brother's house, same brother that picked me up that morning. That brother is not with us today. He has passed away. One of the girls who was in the store, who was over at the house, is not with us today. There's a lot of people that have lost their life to this. So I've had 44 friends I personally knew under the age of 35 dying from drugs or drug-related violence. Not condoning it. We end up back at their house. Okay, I've used my few bucks. they've shared enough. I'm not getting any more, okay? I'm not getting any more drugs. I don't have any more money, and I really don't have anywhere to go. And I know I'm not going to be allowed to stay there because the brother is trying to get rid of me from the first place. And the former kingpin's living back at his mom's house. So there's a weird thing where people that inject drugs like to get other people to inject drugs, and it's like they want other people to do it too. So they're all messed up, and I said, okay, I'll try it. Okay, and as if, you know what I mean? It's so weird because I don't have any money. There's zero way anybody's going to give me anything. I wasn't even going to ask, but I said, okay, I'll try it. Well, they were so excited that I was willing to try it. They each pitched in a little bit, and I held my arm out, and in the back of the arm, tied it off, and yeah, the former kingpin insisted he be the one to do it, and it leveled me. And that was the start of how that whole Pandora's box was open. Ultimately, the next day, I ended up going. There was a playhouse at my mom's house. I slept in that night. I ultimately ended up, I agreed to go to this crazy Christian rehab, which I will tell a story about tomorrow. Which had a story that happened after it, This sequence of events ultimately led me to being a coke dealer. It pretty much cornered Roanoke College and a good part of Virginia Tech for a good number of time. There was a large likelihood, I'm not going to say, but yeah, it was down and out events that ultimately led me to being in drug court, which I couldn't do drugs because I'd being drug tested, and under a certain set of perfect storm circumstances, I ended up meeting the biggest coke dealer in half the city, which I will get to later. But that morning, I was driving around trying to get one more time. I ended up going back to the house. The former kingpin, his brother, all them, one of his brothers or somebody had stolen his stuff. He owed money on it. He hadn't slept all night. He's got one eye. It's like, and sometimes people get so messed up that eye goes up quarter three. He had quarter three eye. And he's going off, yelling at him, acting crazy, acting violent. Ultimately end up getting a little bit off of him. And then I agreed to go to this crazy Christian rehab, which is absolutely mental. So, yeah, had a car chase, got ripped off, got messed up, got in a car chase, and tried the needle for the first time. That was how it went about, and it's a weird circumstance in which that I got drugs for free because I was willing to try the needle, and it's a weird mental mind screw with drug addiction things, but I was always scared of it and everything else, but to get messed up that one last time, I agreed to do it. So see, I talk about times when I was down and out, and I talk about times when, even when I was up as high as I was, I still talk about how I didn't have credit. What was I going to do with the money? It was basically the nicest couch I could serve to. At times when I had the most money that I could have, one of the times I was living in a halfway house, one of the times I was living in one of my customers' rooms at their house. I had no credit. What was I going to do? It was inevitable that I was going to end up in prison. I watched too many movies, and I don't blame that for anything. I blame myself for my own choices. Okay, I hate it when people blame pop culture media because each person makes choices. I hate it when people blame, people like, where did the parents go wrong? My mom raised me perfect. Every time that I got accused of selling drugs, teachers and everybody else came to my defense and said, no, you have the wrong kid. And they'd come to my aid and come to my defense quick. Why? Because I'm respectful. I treat people with respect. I'm not rude to waiters, waitresses, clerks at stores, and if I see somebody I'm going to speak up for it. I've got a really big moral compass with certain things like that, and even when it came to drug dealing and drug addiction, I had certain rules with that too. And drug dealing, my excuse for that was if I did that, I don't have to be the person stealing. I don't have to be the person scheming, scamming. If I sell drugs, I'm selling it to other people that use drugs. I'm keeping it in that life. And ultimately, that same reasoning, when I found out I had indictments, I quit selling drugs 100% completely for God, for like 9 months. I haven't talked a lot about that 9 months. That was an insane 9 months. I allowed a drug dealer to move in a room in my apartment because I figured I'm not selling. So what's the worst that could happen? Ultimately, I got about 13 months in drug court, which is a program for first-time offenders, for my state charges, for 2 distribution of heroin charges. That's what I got. I got 13 months in a program, and that was actually the high end of the guidelines. My guidelines were like, I think it was 6 months to 15 months. So to do 13 months and do a program, usually people don't even go to jail when they get drug court. But I did 13 months and I got drug court. So that was actually very high into the guidelines for the state charges for actually being a full-on drug dealer. But for not dealing at all, for allowing a drug dealer a room in my apartment because I figured, well, this way I don't have to sell drugs. This way I don't have to lie. I don't have to scheme, scam, steal. I don't have to do any of that. I've got an extra room in my apartment anyway. They can sleep in the apartment. They'll do the deals outside of the apartment, which was an agreement that became less and less honored as time went on. I ended up getting 8 years in federal prison. They asked for 15, and originally I was set to take the fall for for something. You know, I was set to take the fall. Everybody was setting me up. There were a lot of people that testified on something they did not see me do. They did not see me hand the drugs. And Brian Goebel, somebody whose life I saved, I did mouth-to-mouth and CPR on him, kept him alive. He was the person who saved my life back. If he had not testified, I was facing 40 years mandatory minimum in federal prison with a maximum penalty of life in prison. 2 charges, 20 to life. And if Brian Goebel had not spoken up, the best I could have hoped for would for them to have been to combine the 2 20s into one and to do 17 years. Or to do 34. I'm not sure what would have happened. But even when they found out from Brian that I was not the one, I didn't have anything to do with giving him drugs or the other person who ended up passing, they're like, what happened in your apartment? Drugs wouldn't have got sold if it hadn't happened in your apartment. Now, for a long time, I have carried a lot of guilt, and I felt really bad, and I do feel really bad. It's awful that somebody passed and everything else. But through enough reflection on this, do you really think if the deal hadn't happened, if I hadn't had an apartment with a drug dealer living in it, that those drugs would not have gotten sold, that they wouldn't have met somebody at a gas station? No. There's one person who I'd like to think of as an overambitious DEA agent who really did not like me, who I think a lot of this had to do with him. At my bond hearing, he spoke up to try to make sure with everything he could that I didn't get out. He was the last person to speak. They asked the pretrial person who did the report if they thought, they said, we think it's that it'd be okay. He's low risk. He's got ties to the community, everything else. We think it's low risk. We don't have a problem with it. They asked the United States Attorney, says, don't see if there's an issue with it. Actually, the bond hearing judge, he said this. When he found out why I was there, he said, why is he here? Never mind. Don't answer that. He said that in the courtroom. Yeah, it got that bizarre that even he could look at it and see it. My lawyer asked for me to get out. This one DEA agent stood up and he said that. And, he had a lot of issues with me. He told me that his daughter was on drugs and that, basically it's like, I don't know what it was, but he really did not like me. And a lot of weird stuff that I'm going to put the pieces of a big puzzle together, and I'm going to ruffle some stuff up. 2 people who went home, who were with the person who didn't make it, that testified against me for something they didn't see me do. 2 people who testified, 2 snitches in my case, apologized to me. They apologized to my mom. Said that they were told, say this or you're going to prison. I'm going to try to get up with those people at some point and see if they'll talk about things. I'm not talking about doing it right now. It's going to be a little bit, but it's something I think would be interesting. Maybe get their take on it. So anyways, if you liked the video, if you think I earned it, press the like button. If not, 24 minutes and 44 seconds of your life in which you will never get back. But I surely hope you did. Y'all have a good one.